You've definitely heard the word vandalism, but have you ever stopped to think about the people it's named after? Who were the Vandals? In this explainer, we're going to peel back the layers of history and uncover the real story of how their name became a synonym for, well, destruction.
So yeah, let's just get right to it. Where does the word vandalism come from? I mean, we throw it around all the time to describe senseless destruction. But the story behind it, it's tied to a very real group of people.
And the answer? Well, it's not some simple dictionary definition. Oh no. It's a whole saga, a 100-year story of migration, of conquest, of a lost African kingdom. It's about a people who were pushed to the absolute brink, gambled everything, and left a mark so deep it's literally part of our language today. So let's dive in. And to do that, we have to start in a world that was basically falling apart.
Right, so to get the Vandals, you first have to get the world they came from. And that world was Roman. But it was a Roman world that was absolutely crumbling.
Okay, so picture this. The late 300s, early 400s, it was just pure chaos. First, in 395, the Roman Empire officially splits in two, which you can imagine made it way harder to deal with, well, anything. And then, the Huns. They sweep into Europe from the east like a force of nature, pushing all these Germanic peoples west. It's this massive domino effect. And caught up in all of this are the Vandals. They're fleeing the Huns, and in 406, they cross the frozen Rhine River into Roman territory. And you gotta remember, they weren't just an army. They were refugees, an entire people on the move, who eventually find a temporary foothold in Spain.
And this is so important to understand. It really was a tale of two empires. You had the Eastern Roman Empire, based in Constantinople, which was doing pretty well for itself. It was stable, it was prosperous, but the West, the West was a different story entirely. It was in serious decline, riddled with internal revolts, and just couldn't handle the constant pressure on its borders. And that weakness, that's the key. It's the crack in the wall that everything is about to pour through.
So the Vandals are in Spain, but they're kind of pinned down by other groups. So they make this incredibly bold, desperate move. It's a total gamble, and they're going for the biggest prize in the Western Mediterranean, the Roman province of Africa.
And again, I really want to stress this. This wasn't just an army. We're talking about 80,000 people. Men, women, and children. The entire Vandal nation crosses from Spain into Africa in 429. This was a full-on migration. They were looking for a home, a place where they could finally be secure.
So you might be wondering, how did they just cross into Roman Africa? Well, Roman politics was an absolute mess. There's this story, a legend really, that the Roman governor there, a guy named Boniface, was in a feud with the main government and he actually invited the Vandals over to be his muscle. Now, we don't know for sure if that's true, but man, if it is, that has to go down as one of the worst ideas in the history of bad ideas.
As the Vandals push through North Africa, they eventually lay siege to the city of Hippo. And this siege goes on for 14 months. It's a huge turning point because during that siege, the city's famous bishop dies. And that bishop was St. Augustine, one of the most important figures in all of Western thought. It's just this incredibly powerful symbol, right? The old Roman order in Africa was literally dying as the Vandals were at the gates.
Okay, so the Vandals now have this foothold in Africa, and they don't just survive, they absolutely thrive. And that's thanks to their new leader, a guy named Genseric. He was brilliant, he was ruthless, and under him, the Vandals are about to become a pirate kingdom, a real maritime empire.
Genseric was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. First, he signs a peace treaty with the Romans in 435. That buys him time, lulls them into thinking everything's cool, and what does he do at that time? Something nobody expected. He builds a massive navy. He turns his people, who are known for fighting on land, into a serious power on the sea. And then bam! In 439, he breaks the treaty and snatches the great city of Carthage, completely by surprise. And just like that, with Carthage as his prize, he controls the sea lanes. He's the king of the Mediterranean.
And this is the whole ball game right here. Losing Africa was a death blow for the Western Roman Empire. I mean, Africa was Rome's breadbasket. Its grain fed the entire city of Rome. Its taxes paid the army. When Genseric took it, he wasn't just getting a kingdom for his people. He was cutting off the West's life support. He basically signed its death warrant.
And that brings us to the event that would define the Vandals forever. The year's 455. The Western Roman Emperor gets assassinated. It's chaos, and Genseric sees his opening. Using the political mess and supposedly a plea from the dead emperor's widow as his excuse, he sails his fleet right up to Rome. And for 2 solid weeks, his forces don't just burn the city down, they methodically plunder it. They strip it of everything valuable and ship it all back to Carthage. And this is where we get the word. This event, the sack of Rome, so scarred the memory of the Roman world that centuries later, all the way during the French Revolution, people coined the term vandalism to mean senseless destruction. Now the funny thing is, the actual sack was more of a systematic robbery than a chaotic riot. But it doesn't matter. The memory was so powerful that the Vandal name got stuck with that meaning forever.
But here's the twist. For all its power, this new Vandal kingdom had a fatal flaw, a deep crack running right through the middle of it, and that division would, eventually, tear it apart from the inside.
And this wasn't just about conquerors and the conquered. It was about religion. See, the Vandals were Arian Christians. Basically, they believed that Jesus was created by God the Father, and not quite his equal. But the Romano-African people they were ruling, they were Nicene Christians, what would become Catholics, who believed in the Trinity, that the Father and the Son are co-equal. And this difference, it sounds theological, but it created this massive, unbridgeable gap between the rulers and the ruled.
Now the old king, Genseric, he was smart about it. He knew how to manage this tension. He'd put pressure on the Catholic clergy in the cities, the centers of Roman power, but he mostly left the rural folks alone. His son, Huneric, the complete opposite. He was a fanatic. He launched these incredibly brutal persecutions against the Catholics. We're talking torture, executions, even concentration camps. He was a tyrant who made enemies of everyone and just completely destabilized the kingdom his father had built.
Huneric's reign of terror was a disaster. It just fatally weakened the kingdom. Now you've got the Vandal leadership divided, you've got the local population hating their guts. The whole kingdom is just incredibly vulnerable to threats from the inside and from the outside. And here's an interesting side effect of all this. As the Vandals got weaker, this power vacuum opens up. And who fills it? The local Romano-Berber peoples. They start to reassert themselves, carving out their own independent kingdoms in the mountains and the countryside. Roman power had been broken, and now these new local powers were rising up.
And it all just comes to a head so fast. First, a new king, Hilderic, who's friendly with the Romans and the Catholics, takes the throne. But then he gets totally humiliated in a battle against the Berbers, so he looks weak. That weakness leads to a coup by a hardline Vandal nationalist named Gelimer. And that coup, well, that's the perfect excuse for the powerful Eastern Roman emperor, a guy named Justinian, who's just itching to reconquer the West, to finally make his move.
So here we are. After 100 years of power, the Vandal kingdom is facing its ultimate test. It's divided from within, it's surrounded by these new Berber kingdoms, and now, the full might of the Eastern Roman Empire is sailing towards them. The big question is, could this kingdom, born from a desperate gamble, possibly survive the storm that's about to hit?